Last week, Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen went to California to meet with the Speaker of America's House of Representatives, Kevin McCarthy. Obviously, this didn't go down too well with the CCP, who sent out a press release accusing the US of violating the One China principle, and the 3 China-US joint communiques. Originally, it looked like that was all China was going to do in response. However, after French President Emmanuel Macron and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen returned to Europe on Friday, the PLA performed a series of aggressive military drills around the island, sparking fears of a full-blown conflict. So in this video, we're going to look at why China is so angry about Tsai Ing-wen's visit to the US, the PLA's military drills, and whether China is actually planning to invade Taiwan anytime soon. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. So let's start with the proximate cause of the recent spike in tensions: Tsai Ing-wen's meeting with Kevin McCarthy in California. Originally, McCarthy had wanted to visit Taipei, as Pelosi did last year, but Taiwan convinced him to do the meeting in California instead to appease the CCP, who are less fussed about Taiwanese officials visiting the US than US officials visiting Taiwan, because it doesn't look so much like the US is actively promoting Taiwanese independence. This is why the CCP reacted furiously when Pelosi visited in August, with massive PLA military drills, including firing missiles over Taiwan. Anyway, Tsai left Taiwan for a 10-day trip of the US in late March, and on Wednesday she met McCarthy at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library in California. At the meeting, McCarthy claimed that the US-Taiwan relationship was stronger than at any point in his lifetime, and Tsai warned that democracy was under threat. Originally, it looked like Tsai's efforts to appease the CCP by staging the meeting in the US instead of Taiwan had paid dividends. As usual, the CCP told the US that they didn't like what they were doing and reaffirmed the One China principle. They also warned of, quote, countermeasures, but a day after the meeting, nothing really happened. However, in retrospect, it seems like she was holding back while French President Emmanuel Macron and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen were visiting Beijing. When the two of them left on Friday, the PLA announced 3 days of military exercises around the Taiwan Strait, beginning on Saturday. This strategy apparently paid dividends. Macron returned from his China trip apparently convinced that Taiwan wasn't an issue, telling Politico that the great risk for Europe is getting caught up in crises that are not ours. Anyway, on the first day of the drills, the exercises were limited to the Chinese coastline, but by day 3, the PLA was sailing its warships so close to Taiwan that there were several face-offs between the PLA and the Taiwanese Navy. According to Taiwan's defense ministry, the so-called Joint Sword exercises on Monday included 12 warships and 91 aircraft, 54 of which crossed the Taiwan Strait median line. For context, the median line is basically an unofficial line that runs through the middle of the Taiwan Strait. In the past, it was convention that neither side would fly over the line, but as China's relations with the US and Taiwan have deteriorated over recent years, the convention has eroded, and the PLA now regularly fly their aircraft over the line. In some sense, these exercises were even more aggressive than the ones after Pelosi's visit in August. While the PLA didn't fire any missiles over the island as they did in August, more aircraft crossed the median line. They simulated an aircraft carrier strike on the island, and this might be the closest the two navies have come to actual combat. Worryingly for Taipei, on Monday morning, at least 8 Chinese ships were still sailing around Taiwan after the drills had apparently ended. So what does this mean? Is China about to invade Taiwan? Well, unsurprisingly, the spike in tensions provoked a flurry of anxious headlines in the Western press about the prospect of an immediate invasion, and even a couple suggesting that the US should redirect its attention away from Ukraine towards Taiwan. Now, there is definitely cause for concern here. Many US intelligence officials apparently think that China will invade sometime before 2027, and earlier this year, General Mike Minihan, head of the US Air Military Command, predicted that the US and China will probably go to war in 2025, after Taiwan's presidential elections, which are due in 2024. People who think that an invasion is likely before 2027 argue that if Xi has ruled out peaceful reunification, which seems increasingly unlikely, then he'll probably invade sooner rather than later. China's economy is slowing, its population is aging, and its military advantage over the US in the Pacific is expected to wane in 2027, when the new US military tech will come online. On the island, perceptions of the mainland are deteriorating, with fewer and fewer Taiwanese identifying as Chinese each year. This, combined with continuing success of the Democratic People's Party and the widening ideological gap between Taiwan and the mainland, mean that Taiwan is only going to drift further from mainland China in the future. However, there are reasons to be skeptical here. For starters, while the CCP might make angry noises every time they feel the US violates the One China principle, Xi himself sounds more measured. China's anti-succession law stipulates that non-peaceful means would only be used against Taiwan when all other possibilities have been completely exhausted. And Xi has stressed that time and momentum are on Beijing's side. It's also worth saying that Xi actually sounded pretty dovish on Taiwan in his New Year speech, where he mostly stuck to boilerplate statements about the One China principle and expressed hope that, quote, our compatriots on both sides of the strait will work together with a unity of purpose to jointly foster lasting prosperity on the Chinese nation. Perhaps most importantly though, the PLA just aren't ready to take Taiwan, at least not with any guarantee of success. Despite massive increases in military spending, the PLA is still an untested force, and the US is stepping up its military alliances in the region. Anyway, you get the idea. Invading Taiwan would be a massive risk with enormous costs for China's international reputation and economy, which might put Xi off trying his luck in the near future. In this light, it's perhaps best to interpret the PLA's military drills not as a statement of intent, but more as a form of deterrence, which are only dramatic because Taiwan has got used to the PLA's constant pestering. Now, that's not to downplay the possibility of a conflict. Tensions across the Taiwan Strait have been escalating at a scary pace over the past few years, and if they carry on along a similar trajectory, we're in serious trouble. Nonetheless, the point we're making is that recent drills might be more bark than bite, and an imminent invasion still looks unlikely. That's all for this video, but there's a whole world of TLDR content out there. You might not know, but we actually have 5 different TLDR channels explaining news from the UK, Europe, and the rest of the world, breaking down the latest developments in the business world, and also running through the day's most important news that you might have missed. TLDR has been doing this for around 6 years now, so to celebrate our anniversary, we'd love it if you subscribed. Not only to this channel, but also any of the others that interest you. They're all linked in the description. Our whole purpose is to make the world around you more understandable, to unpack the confusing parts of the news in a way that's interesting, factual, and entirely non-partisan. So if that's something you're into, then you have 5 channels to enjoy. Thanks for your support over the last 6 years. It really means a lot.